And the AI, that's the thing that it does, is it probes the student to make sure that they really understand the foundational concepts before moving on to the next, because so much learning is cumulative, and you have to know one thing before you can learn the next thing, and to ensure that the foundational stuff is known. At base, we want to survive and thrive, right? And as we're in this acceleratedly changing world, how do we do that?
About negotiation and interacting with people, some folks can look at it as a way to just manipulate people and almost have a negative connotation around that. Is this just a way to manipulate people? John Cousins is an investor, educator, tech founder, and best-selling author of Corporate Finance ASAP and over 60 other books. John has taught MBA students at universities worldwide and is the founder of MBA ASAP, which provides training to over 30,000 students and corporations like Adidas, Apple, PayPal, and Mercedes-Benz, to name a few. John believes that helping others succeed economically raises overall prosperity, including your own. He created the MBA ASAP platform to lift up entrepreneurs and those working in other businesses, bringing the sky-high education costs of an MBA down and within reach of anyone who wants it. If you're an entrepreneur who's struggling with certain aspects of your business or just getting started and want to do it right from the ground up, this episode is for you. Enjoy the show. John, thank you so much for coming on, man. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, thanks, Brian. Likewise, it's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Oh, you are very welcome, sir. So, first off, why did you start MBA ASAP? What bridge were you building by doing that?
Yeah, right. It started from a number of different things sort of converging. And I would say that I started out as an engineer, an electrical engineer. And the arc of my career has basically been, engineering, working for companies. I worked for ABC Television, designing and building facilities for the network for a decade. And then I went back to business school because I wanted to I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I was, at that time, working on the cutting edge of television and broadcast, like what new products could we make? My clients were sports and news, and so they had all these ideas about, little cameras that they could put on a bobsled, or parabolic mics on the side of the sidelines where they could hear what's going on, and all that kind of, things. So I thought, well, and I was working with companies to develop those things, and then they would develop them, and then they'd sell a whole bunch of them. And I thought, I understand that process. I'd like to be on the other side of this and using my technical skills and my ideas about where the future was going and to build things and sell things, And so I decided to go back to business school. And another impetus there was I picked up an annual report of ABC. That's who I worked for, American Broadcasting Company, and picked up their annual report and realized I can't understand this balance sheet, income statement, cash flow statement, these financial statements, and what the heck they were saying. This is how you understand the business that I was actually living in, So I thought, I really need to. That's like arcane information that I need to understand, if I want to progress in the world and understand the world at a deeper level, so I could play more, And so those are the reasons I went to business school. And I went to the Wharton School. It's at University of Pennsylvania. And it's a good business school. And it's basically where they say the quant jocks go. If you're an engineer or a numbers guy, you go there because it's more finance and engineering, where Harvard, Stanford, they're more case studies and analysis of businesses and more verbal type of understandings. So I went there, did that, and then decided to move to the Great Southwest. And instead of moving back to New York and doing the traditional road out of a business school is consulting or investment banking, or also product management. Working for Procter and Gamble, or one of those big companies, and taking over a brand and managing brand management. So those are really the three things you do. You go to Bain, McKinsey, or the Boston Consulting Group, or for consulting, or you go to J.P. Morgan or Morgan Stanley or one of the other big investment banks and become an investment banker. And I really didn't want to do that. First of all, I was chafing at working for companies and having my life constrained by what the dictates of what I had to do for others, and it felt claustrophobic to me. And I really wanted to strike out on my own and try to, succeed or fail on my own merits and find out what that was like. And that really opened me up. It was so freeing. But coming to the Southwest and trying to start companies was kind of challenging. I ended up I've started probably 14 companies. Some of them have been great ideas that really didn't take off. Some of them have been because of the partners or something clashing, abject failures that sort of ripped apart, sort of like bands do.
Right.
And then others were, lucky enough that the timing was right and things went right and were relatively successful. I ended up taking two companies public. When you're an entrepreneur, if you think about planning with the end in mind, the end is some sort of exit where you can have a liquidity event where you can change your value in the company, your equity in the company into cash money. And so there's only a couple of ways that can happen. One is if the company is successful enough that you can just start living off of the income streams of that company. But usually the exits are either it gets acquired by another company. Maybe you're lucky enough you build something and Google or Microsoft think it's cool and they buy you for $100 million. Or you take the company public in an initial public offering, an IPO. And I did two of those, and I ended up running those companies in various guises as CFO and CEO for about 15 years. So I really understood that process and what it was to do the annual reports, the 10Ks, the SEC reporting, working with auditors, raising money, and then deploying that money and trying to meet milestones and deliverables along a plan. And so that was all, absolutely thrilling and also very tough. The ones that don't work are, I've got the bruises and scars, but that's the learning that you do, and you want to maybe avoid that in the future, help other people to avoid that. And so at that time, as I was doing all that, my sister was working for a big company, for AT&T in finance, and she was teaching finance in a college in New Jersey at night, night school there to the MBAs. And I thought that's so cool. I'd love to, try teaching, my hand at teaching. So I started putting out feelers and got some jobs in some different universities and colleges, and really started to enjoy that. But what I realized was, I get into these, and I remember from my, undergrad and grad school days, the textbooks are like this thick, and it's like 800 pages of accounting, 800 pages of finance, 800 pages of marketing in a book that's been printed and maybe 15 years old or 10 years old.
Right.
And so in this day and age, things get outdated relatively quickly, especially in marketing.
Oh yeah.
Digital marketing has completely changed. You look at shows like Mad Men or something, and those guys back then, Madison Avenue in the 1960s, television was the thing. And if you had enough money to deploy, you could make a big enough awareness campaign that your product was gonna sell, whether it was beer, cigarettes, or whatever. And but nowadays it's become more of an engineering thing. It's not like that legacy understanding that those guys had. Maybe on the messaging side and the communication side, certainly that stuff is transferable. But when you get into like Google Analytics and Facebook ads and all these kind of things, it's a lot of computer engineering to a degree. And so it's a whole different skill set than it was. And so marketing has transformed in ways. So all these textbooks were so big, and I started realizing that my students they couldn't see the forest through the trees in many instances. They were inundated, like drinking through a fire hose. They had so much information coming at them that they had no way of categorizing that information into a context because they didn't have an idea about what was fundamental and then what was sort of maybe peripheral and maybe theoretically or intellectually interesting. You're in a college environment, right? And these formulas or this idea may be theoretically interesting, but it's not the kind of thing that you would deploy every day on your feet, while you're making decisions rapidly and navigating, managing a company or growing a company or trying to get people to, do what you want them to do through leadership and negotiations and things like
Right.
that. Well, I started to think about that and, boil these big textbooks down to like, there's 20 pages worth of stuff here that I would use every day as a CFO, as a finance guy, what are those things? And so as I started to teach that way, I could see the light bulbs go off in the students, they go, oh, wow, I've taken 4 or 5 courses in accounting and I never really understood what a balance sheet was, debits and credits and all that stuff. I'd ask them, quickly, okay, what's a balance sheet? Put up a thing on the whiteboard, and they'd panic like deer in the headlights. They weren't confident, they'd start throwing out different buzzwords, but not really understanding what they were saying. And they'd be more timid and scared than they were confident about, wait a minute, I know these fundamentals, blah, 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 And so once I started teaching that way, I realized there was sort of a niche for that. And as I was doing that, the technology was advancing, the internet was coming, more and more tools were coming out. Um, you know, um, our little cell phones, the iPhone came out in 2007 and suddenly, you had a movie camera disembodied into your phone and everything. So I started, and Amazon was coming along and they have a program called Kindle Direct Publishing where you can publish books through Amazon. And so that's what I started to do. I started to write this stuff up, starting with PowerPoint presentations that were my courses. And that became outlines for like little books. And I'd write up the books in just a Word document, upload that to Kindle Direct Publishing. They have a cover maker, and boom, you have a book that you can sell. And not only do they do the Kindle version, the ebook version, but they also do what they call POD, print on demand.
Mm.
They print a book for one book at a time. So you don't have to buy 1,000 copies and have them in your garage, and sell them out. When somebody orders the paperback or the hardcover, they print that up right then and they send it out. And so all of that work is taken care of. There's no money tied up in inventory or working capital because it's just on who buys it. So it made sense to just start uploading things and seeing if people liked them or not. And so currently I just published my 63rd book. So I
Wow.
have 63 books on it. So, and it sounds like a lot, but over time it was relatively easy to do. And then I also started just, filming my lectures online and putting them up, posting them up to a site called Udemy, which is a nice site to make courses. And that started to gain, both these things started to gain traction because the technology was there to meet people all over the world with these different, with my digital content. And so, that's why I say it was like sort of a convergence of my interests and what I was seeing. And then also the technology was at a place that made this possible. So those are the reasons I started it. And now thinking about what MBA ASAP really means is, it's about skill stacking, and for everybody to have whatever you're doing. If you're a musician, if you have a bakery, if you have a, car mechanic shop, or if you're going to go to business school, or if you're in mid-career, you really need to hone business skills as part of your skill stack because then you can talk to your accountant, then you can figure out, how to market, all these kind of things that are business skills. And those are good for everybody. And when you think about it, in such a changing world now, right? Everything's changing so quickly, and we're all trying to think about what are the jobs of the future? Where are things going to go? What is, and because at base, we want to survive and thrive, right? And as we're in this acceleratedly changing world, how do we do that? And so instead of thinking about, well, like they say, the great hockey player said, guy said, I don't skate to where the puck is. I skate to where the puck's going to be. That type of court sense about where's the puck going to be in the future, 5 years out with AI and everything else. Another way to think about it for our skill sets is what is going to remain constant, what's been a constant and what's still going to be valuable in that time. And one of those things I believe is business skills.
Mm.
Finances are not going to change. Leadership is not going to change. Negotiation skills are not going to change. They're going to stay the same. So having that skill stack for all of us makes us more adaptable. because it's not the strongest or the fastest that survive, as Darwin said. It's the most adaptable, in evolution. So it gives us those skill sets that let us be adaptable, because it's something that's going to stay the same, you know, no matter what other things happen in technology and social events and world geopolitics and everything else.
Mm. Well, I absolutely agree. You have to skate to where the puck is going to be, especially in this day and age, like you said, with how rapidly things are advancing, the onboarding of AI, and how the landscape is just it's shifting underneath of our feet. So yeah, if you can skate to where that puck is, you're going to be ahead of the game for sure. But I like how you make the point of there is going to be things that are constant, and these business skills, like you said, leadership, negotiation, finance, all of these things are going to be concrete in, like, really anybody can use them. But I mean, this channel is all about entrepreneurship. So we're focusing on the business realm. And obviously, those skills are paramount for that realm. And so you mentioned negotiation, and this is always an interesting topic to dive into. So I really want to get into this with you. Where did you start really getting into negotiation, understanding its importance, and really implementing it into what you did in your business journey?
Oh, thanks, Brian. Yeah, the let's see. I started. Well, I took a negotiations course at Wharton because I was kind of interested in. I thought it was something important. And then after I went to business school, I kept reading like just tons of books. I remember I used to go every day and ride a life cycle at lunch at this gym, and I would stay on it for 48 minutes, and I would bring a book, and I would just read a book the whole time, and I started gathering up all these books, and a lot of them were on negotiations. One's like deal making, and you can negotiate anything, and all these different books that I thought would really help me, and started to amass that type of knowledge. At that time, I had a boutique real estate firm in tenant representation, representing the tenant side of things, and so all of my business was really negotiating leases and negotiating the economic deals of buying and leasing real estate.
Mm.
So I put that stuff into practice right away and realized, oh, these techniques really work good. And there's a number of things that I find important in that. And in my, I have an acronym called PIANO, PIANO, about how to negotiate. And basically,
Well, actually,
you know,
before we get into that, and I definitely want to hear this, and so does everybody else. Before we get into that, I just had this question of about negotiation and interacting with people. Um, some folks can look at it as a way to just manipulate people, and almost have a negative connotation around that. Is this just a way to manipulate people?
no, absolutely, and that's a great point to make, and thanks for saying that. The no, it's actually the opposite in a way, and that's the thing is taking. People think about it like a clash and who's going to win and who dominates a negotiation. And it's better to have, and it's become like a catch win-win situations. Where both sides seem like they come out now. In any negotiations, both sides are going to have to compromise to some degree. So not if it's multipolar or just two people, two negotiation sides, um, no one is going to come out with everything they want, because there's going to be things that have to be compromised on. But really, to take the person to person out of the negotiation and make it so that both sides are looking at the problem or the issue and how do we solve this together? How do we make this so that we both can get something out of this? And a lot of times, what that comes down to is listening. Listening is one of the key skills of negotiating. Everybody comes in with their position, and they're going to stand firm on that position, and that's it. And they're not going to give it, but any inch. But really, in any situation, there's a lot of different aspects to it. And you may be thinking about, this is the most important thing to me in this negotiation, and the other side might be thinking that something else different is important to them that's not so important to you. And if you can listen and really start it with a dialogue and a conversation to draw them out, what are their important, parts? What do they really want out of this? What is their issues that they find, important? Then sometimes you can craft a deal that satisfies both parties, where one party gets what they want and the other party gets what if it's an orange, right? Maybe one party wants the peel to make, a cake, and they need that, that peel, and the other person wants the inside because they want to make juice, right? And so, well, you give the one party the peel, the other guy the inside, and both get what they want because they wanted different things.
Hmm.
And so that, I think, is really critical and a part of negotiations that people tend to not think about is, and even in just communication, listening, finding out what the other side is all about, what they need, what they want, what kind of, is it face saving, all these kind of things that are paramount to them, that maybe you can give on and get what you need in this negotiation, because making a deal hopefully is better than no deal at all for both sides.
Right.
And so you have to figure out where that middle ground is and really probe it and make that middle ground. Now, that being said, too, sometimes the best deal you can make is no deal, because you might make a deal that's bad and then you're burdened by, the terms and conditions that you agreed to.
Mm.
So that's another aspect of it. And also, if you're going to go in there and force and dominate the other side, and you think that you extracted everything from them and you've belittled them, and yeah, they're you showed them who it is. Well, is that other side? Do you think they're actually going to have an incentive to comply with the terms of the deal? Probably not. So you have to also make a deal that people are going to want to comply with their side of it. Otherwise, they may just walk away, and you said you're going to do this, and well, come sue me or whatever, and people just don't do it. So it really becomes, important to make deals that are good for both sides, and really understanding that, and go into it with that type of idea about, you want to try to find out where's the middle ground where you can really help the other side attain what they need as well. Especially in this day and age, it used to be that a lot of companies were, and they still are, hierarchical. You can see it like the military, right? They give a command, everybody down the chain has to follow that command, and there's no ifs, and or buts. There's no negotiations. There's no like, well, what's my motivation here? Why should I do this? It's like, they said, charge there, you charge there. And a lot of companies are like that, right? The boss says to do this. Why? Because I told you so. They don't go through any kind of negotiating process or anything like that. But nowadays, like with me, with my companies, from an entrepreneurship standpoint, a lot of what I do, I don't have any employees. It's all automated, or I get consultants. And so everything is consulting contracts. And so I create mosaics of talent that are appropriate to whatever task is at hand, and then reassemble that, mosaic for the next task. And so that keeps, going. And when in that way, you're paying those people, yes, but you have to convey to them, it's negotiations. That's what it coheres people together to work. It's like you have to explain to them why they should do this and why it's good and all that, so that they understand what they're doing. Because you're in a flatter, and even in any flatter organization, where the middle management has been compressed, you want to be able to not only negotiate with adversaries or the other side, but negotiate with your peers and with the people that are going to be your employees, or are going to be your consultants. It's absolutely critical.
100%. And I want to make sure that I get this question out, because you just said something really profound and powerful, which was the fact that you assemble this mosaic of talent for every single company that you operate, and probably multiple times within that same company, depending on what the task is, right? Guys, what we're talking about here is having people subscribe to your mission as the CEO of the company. This is something that so many people struggle with. If you have a high rate of turnover, employee dissatisfaction, if you have projects that are not being completed on time and you can't figure out why, this subject that we're talking about right here is absolutely critical And John obviously is a master at this, having done it so many times. So I really want to ask you, John, how do we get these employees to subscribe to your vision when you're talking to them and negotiating the terms of their contract, or in the case of a business owner that has employees, the terms of their employment?
Well, and thanks, Brian. Thanks for keying in on that and extracting, these important points, because yeah, sometimes I fly by them. It's great, and that's why it's so good to have a conversation like this. Well, yeah, this is sort of where the maybe the borders blur between leadership, management, and negotiations. And but at the base of all leadership and management, in a way, are negotiation skills, and it basically comes down to, first of all, finding out what floats their boat, right? Do they feel is really important to them, and then how do you craft your messaging and how does your mission, you know, how are you going to communicate your mission to what is important to those people, so that they feel like that's something I'm really interested in, or I adhere to, I believe in. So they're ready to go the extra mile and understand and then they have a set of criteria to decide how to prioritize their work so that they're doing the things that are most mission critical. And so, yeah, so negotiations, as you say, like, we're on this side, we're not on the opposite sides of the table, we're on the same side of the table looking at this problem. How are we going to address this obstacle, this hurdle, this deliverable, whatever it is, in a meaningful way, and make progress towards it, and get them excited about making that progress, and also communicating to them so they don't have to be fearful. A lot of people are just, when you get into a bureaucracy, at any level, it's much easier to do nothing and then not get blamed and fired than it is to do something great and you don't get the upside of it, because it's just part of the bureaucracy. So why risk it? Why risk your job or something to do something really powerful, if you're not going to reap the rewards, but you will, reap the downside if it doesn't work. So you get risk averse. And so if you can convince people that they can take chances within a parameters, and as long as they communicate when something's not going right, instead of trying to sweep it under the rug or hide it or something like that, so that you can actually fix it, early on, that's the way that you operate.
Mm.
And so you're not going to blame people and fire them or yell at them for failure. But failure isn't really failure. It's just you found the way that it's not going to work. So how do we course correct to get on to the path that will actually work?
And
So
something
yeah.
that one of my interviewees also said along this subject, and I wanted to get your opinion on this since we're on this topic of hiring and finding people the right position within the company vision. Something that this person said was to basically bring the person that you're interviewing in, have them sit down, and obviously the topic of conversation is going to be centered around what they're there to interview for, but before you jump into that, give them like a sheet that says, hey, we're also hiring for these positions, and these are how these roles fit into the company and vision. And by the way, just because you're here to apply for X doesn't mean you can't change your mind right now and say, no, 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 I want to be Y. I'm excited about being Y in this company. What do you feel about that?
That's a great idea. That's a really super idea, because not only they might sort of completely change and do that, or you might get a better feel for what their other interests are too. And because a lot of roles, you sort of come in with this siloed kind of idea about what the role's going to be, but people have other skill sets that can go over. And I think the best employees are ones that have more than one skill set, so they can talk to other people in the company in a meaningful way, and contribute in a meaningful way. Because when you have everybody siloed and no one's talking across, those different positions or roles, or divisions or departments, that can be dysfunctional, because you really have to have cross departmental, cross functionality communication and actually work to get things done, especially again, nowadays a lot more of things are much more multidisciplinary. The way you do it. If it's biotechnology, it's going to be physics and biology and lots of other things. Whatever it is, there's all these different skill sets that have to come together. And so, having people that can see and talk across those things and manage across them is really, really important. So, yeah, getting a feel for someone's skill sets and interests, and I think interests even more than skill sets sometimes, because that's where people are going to be motivated to work. And that's one of the things too about hiring and working with people and teaching. They're very similar, managing and leading and teaching, in developing talent. And that's something I've always loved to do. Is when you hire someone and they're at this level, and then you start incrementally giving them more responsibility, and they realize they can handle it, and they start to bloom and they start to blossom, and you can see them ready to take on new tasks, and gaining in confidence within an organization or something. That's a wonderful thing to feel like you've been a part of helping people to achieve. I love that. So
Absolutely. And it feels good. It creates, like we were talking about before, it creates that win-win situation with the people that are sitting on the same side of the table, the CEO
absolutely.
and the employee that's coming in. So great stuff. I'm glad we went down that rabbit hole. But now I want to switch back to the opposite side of the table. So we've got two CEOs negotiating, trying to get something that they want, right? And just real quick before we jump into the piano acronym that you mentioned earlier, because I haven't forgot, but right before we get into that, I just wanted to ask this question. How important is it, or do you implement any kind of pre-framing before you even start the negotiation to like set your intentions or help people drop their guard?
Well, I think that's part of it, is to, yeah, definitely to do some, like you say, pre-framing, to get a personal connection with people before you dive into, the details and the nitty gritty, to really, so they understand you as a person more than just a adversary or something, and you understand them in the same way. And it makes for a rapport. It makes for a much less frictiony, negotiation. And it also provides people with you can extract information about them that then you can develop. This is where their interests are. This is where they come from, so that you can craft a better negotiated agreement.
Mm,
Yeah. So absolutely, I think it's critical to gain a personal rapport with people.
yeah,
And that again comes back to listening. Really, you go in with your ideas about what this is going to be, how it's going to work, what's going to happen, and then people surprise you because they are a different set of desires and interests and needs.
right. Yep, 100%. Well, I'm glad that you agree with that, because I definitely think it's very important to set that intention that, you're not here to railroad anybody. I really want to create this win-win situation between both of us. That way we both can walk away from this compromising, but yet feeling really good about where we are. So yeah, let's get into now the setup, or the components, however you wanted to describe it, the piano, playing the piano to get this negotiation from the start of the piece of music to the end.
Well, let's see. Now I have to. So the first one, the P, and it's an acronym. The P is personalities. So remove the personalities from the equation. So you're both. You're not doing what they call ad hominem, where you're arguing at the person. And saying you're stupid or whatever. But basically, we're here to try to look at this. This problem we have, or this pie that we want to slice up in some way. And is there ways to make the pie bigger so that we both get big, whatever it is. And the second is interests. What are the interests of the people, on both sides? Because the interests that are paramount to one side, like we said, are not certainly paramount to the other side. And how can you craft something where, like the orange pulp and the orange peel, where both sides get what they want. And the A is alternatives, and that's where you go back and brainstorm, right? And you
Mm,
go, that's the part where you really think of what are all the different ways that this deal could be could be done. And you have a lot of alternatives that then you can present. And it's basically like what you said about, you've come for this job, but here's a list of other jobs we have. Here's some alternatives, to start to think about, and let's talk about these alternatives. And so that way, as you even present alternatives, it sort of widens the area that you're negotiating, and you can see how the other sides respond to it too. And that's,
And I love the fact that you use the word alternatives here versus like options or choice. Alternatives, it provides a way for the other party to get into the conversation and feel like they're part of building the solution rather than you only get to pick A or B. So which one is it?
right, exactly. And that's, I think you hit the nail on the head there about if you can draw the other side into thinking that they're contributing and they're being heard, they're, and this is a,
Collaboration.
a collaboration. A negotiation is a collaboration. It's not just right. Here it is. Here, either you do this or this, take it or leave it, kind of thing. The old Plato or Plumbo kind of thing. Either you take the money or you take the lead, kind of thing that the gangsters do. Um, so yeah, exactly. You want to make the other side feel like, wow, we're actually collaborating here. We're collaborating to solve this issue that we have before us, and we're both trying to figure that out, right? And then basically, it is, you have to have alternatives too. That's another part of it, that you have to have a plan B. What is your best alternative to a negotiated solution?
Hmm.
So that you're not, you go into it and you say, here's basic. You're not going to tell the other side what it is, but here are my baselines that I'm not going to, it wouldn't make sense for me to go below those. So because sometimes in negotiations, the emotions can run pretty high, and you can end up making a deal that wasn't very good for you. And that's what happened. That's why people, auctioneers, and people that are raising money for charities or something love auctions, right? Because in auctions, people get emotional and they bid, and they keep bidding, and they're, oh, this guy's bidding more. And they get into the gamified side of it and realize, oh my God, I just bought a head of lettuce for $2,000. It's like, so you don't want to be there. So you want to have your framework of what are the things that absolutely are below that you're not going to go, or you're not going to do these kind of things, so that you understand that you really do feel like you have an alternative. If you walk away, if you don't have an alternative, then you feel like, I've got to make this deal no matter what.
Hmm.
And if you feel that way, you're really in a compromised position. You don't want to be there. You want to say, well, if this doesn't work, Mazel tov, really appreciate it. We talked it through all this, but it's not going to work. And then you go down that alternative path, and you feel really comfortable with that. And it's credible. You really are going to walk away. You're not like threatening. I'm going to walk away if you don't do this.
Right.
And the other side can say, yeah, right. You're not going to walk away. We know we got you. So you really have to be, if you're comfortable and credible with the alternative to making that a negotiated solution, then you can actually negotiate and craft something that is going to be beneficial for your side as well. And so
Perfect.
that's basically how the acronym is a way to remember the different steps, so that you have a way. But
So
it's
that's the
basically
so that's the I want to make sure we get through all of it because that was just the A. So we still have the N and the O to go here at least.
the N and the O. You know what? I forget. I can't think it off the top of my head. I should have brought up my little acronym chart, but I can send that to you. Put it in the notes. I have a little cheat sheet, little infographic of it. It's a way to basically remember these different steps, so that we're in there. What I just did was I forgot them. But that's the thing, is to have your plan based out, so that you know what to do and when to do it.
So we're running short on time here, but I've got to make sure that we talked about this AI negotiation course because obviously the landscape of business is changing. AI is here to stay. It's very important if you want to be competitive. So how is this AI negotiation course? How is it helping people? What does it do?
Oh, Brian, thanks. Yeah, this is so I've taken. I was approached by this startup in AI, and these guys are brilliant, and they are looking for use cases for their AI tools that they're developing. And so they wanted to have, in different verticals, have a use case that they could show an application. So what we've developed is we took my negotiations course materials, my books, my videos, all that kind of stuff, and put that into a AI engine. And then one of their secret sauces is that they have tools that can render video and audio very quickly. That's their algorithm sort of things. So it takes this information and it goes through this program just like my course does, and asking the student, or the customer, what do you know about negotiations? It starts off and then finds out what they do know, what they don't know, and then starts querying them and giving them information about the stuff. So it's a progressive course, and it every 15, 20 seconds, it asks another question of the student. And then from how they answer, it knows what kind of content to deliver to make their knowledge, to fill in their knowledge about negotiations, and gives them negotiation practice, all these different practice things and all. So the course, and it's delivered, it's audio, right? You talk, and it's what they call an digital avatar of me. It's a picture of me. I've done all these videos so it looks like me, but it's actually responding with the AI, delivered content, and it's in my voice, and it's speaking that stuff, and it's understanding what the student says and responding in kind, and it does it in 120 languages.
Dude, that is incredible.
It's unbelievable. And I've from my Udemy courses and all, and my course on my website, MBA-ASAP.com, I have students now in 167 countries, all over the world, all over the world. They're all interested in these business skills, which is really remarkable to me and so much fun for me. So having it in 120 languages really makes sense. So all of my content to this point, has been delivered in English, and English is like the second language of many countries, most people. So it's become the lingua franca of the world. But still, people talk in their native languages, and so I want to be able to deliver it in Spanish or Hindi or whatever kind of language, and Arabic. And so this is really exciting for me. And the amazing thing is, it's one-on-one type of teaching, which I couldn't do anyway. It's video now. It's videos, and then people watch them, and now it's one-on-one, but at scale.
Right.
So it's really an amazing thing, and I'm just launching it maybe in the next couple of weeks here. We've been working on it for the last 6 months, and so it's really super exciting, and I think it's going to be a really beneficial way for people to learn. Because one of the great things about video, and it'll be like with this too, is that you can go back and review. If you were daydreaming for 5 seconds, if you're daydreaming in a classroom, you look out the window and you go back and the teacher's been talking for 5 minutes, you can't raise your hand and say, I mean, you could, but you'd be, can you go back and talk about that stuff? I'm sorry, I lost track because I was thinking about what I have to do this weekend.
Right.
You know, but when it's the AI, or if it's video, you can go back and until you really understand it. And the AI, that's the thing that it does, is it probes the student to make sure that they really understand the foundational concepts before moving on to the next, because so much learning is cumulative, and you have to know one thing before you can learn the next thing, and to ensure that the foundational stuff is known. So there's a lot of really interesting pedagogical, reasons to do it this way too. So really excited about this, and looking forward to interacting with people all over the world, and it's just so much fun for me.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Yeah, I've heard about this type of stuff being developed and coming out, but yeah, it's just wild, the abilities that we have now to reach people and communicate. And yeah, you're right. It has to be facilitated in a way that it makes it easy for someone to grasp, but yet still challenges them a little bit. And I love the fact that this AI is basically looking and probing for those knowledge gaps. And then the next lesson that comes up is what is going to fill in those gaps. So it is purely customized to the student, everyone at scale.
You're exactly right, Brian. You've put it very clearly and succinctly, and that's exactly it. Yep.
Man.
So cool. I mean, the future is here. It's wild.
Yeah,
It's just,
it is.
and to use these tools in ways that that benefit us is really what I'm all about and excited about doing.
So
It's just,
do you have like a pre-order or like a list that people can jump on that's like, hey, when this thing gets released, like I want in? Is there anything like that that you can send people towards?
you know what? I don't, but after this, I'm going to talk to my development team and have that done. My website is MBA-ASAP.com, and on there I will have I'll put a button for a pre-list. Yeah, because that would be great. Yeah, and
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah,
That's a
absolutely.
great idea. You just you know,
Well, this is all about entrepreneurship. Rising tide raises
actually,
all ships. So I'm glad I could help. Because
yeah,
yeah,
no, I just think that's what entrepreneurship's about. It's brainstorming, and so thank you.
yeah,
That's amazing.
my pleasure.
Really appreciate that.
Absolutely. So yeah, guys, this video, by the time you see it, by the time it's released, this course will already be out, but I will have in the meantime dropped a link on my social media. As we'll stay in communication. John, you send me that link, to your, or let me know actually when it's up on the site, and I'll just shout you out and be like, hey, this is where it's at. Go click here to get in on this and get on the list. Yeah,
Fantastic.
definitely going to do that because it's super important because these are business skills, but they're also life skills that like we were talking
Absolutely.
before, everybody can benefit from. So
Well, negotiations, yeah, you don't get what you want in life, you get what you negotiate. And even if it's something like, what movie we're going to go see tonight or where we're going to go eat, personal things too, there's a negotiation element to them,
100%. Well, John, I can't thank you enough for this conversation. It has been an absolute pleasure. You have dropped so much knowledge and hope for us to get better in the business and entrepreneurship world. So just thank you so much for what you've done here today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate it too, Brian. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, you know what to do. Share this show with your network. You never know whose life you can positively impact with just a simple and free share. Like the episode, subscribe if you are not already. Go check out John's site, mbaasap.com, link below. So go check that out. And peace. We'll see you in the next one.